Welcome to another lecture series on GE, Life and Literature, offered by the Department of English across the University of Delhi. This is a long lecture series that I'll be taking up for the students of DU who will be appearing for this exam. I welcome you all once again to Hansraj e-Samvaad, a center of distribution of knowledge, where the faculty and staff members at Hansraj College will deliver specialized lectures based on the curriculum of Delhi University. My name is Piyush Chaudhary and I'm an assistant professor here at Hansraj College at the Department of English. I welcome you all. So to begin with the title, let's begin with the title of the paper, which is Life and Literature. This is the title of this generic elective paper. And I would say that very true to the title of the paper, the various texts that are prescribed in the syllabus, they show the various colors, the various hues, the pains, tribulations, the happiness, the joys, the memories, the learnings, the morals that life has to present us. So therefore we are here to understand life through some literary pieces and to appreciate life and to understand the nitty-gritty and the nuances of life in an extremely realistic and I would say an effective manner. Now let me begin with the introduction to the book Wise and Otherwise. As you can see on the screen, this is the book that we will be studying in this paper. This is the publication that I'll be using, and whatever I'm going to study, whatever I'm going to teach in this particular book, as you can see on the screen, this will be the collection of short stories. It's prescribed at the University of Delhi and everyone is suggested to use the same edition. Now this Sudha Murty's Wise and Otherwise is a collection of short anecdotes from the life of Sudha Murty. They are basically real account, anecdotes and real life stories from her life as an entrepreneur, as a teacher, as a social worker and a philanthropist. So these stories reflect Sudha Murty's vision of life, life which has good and bad both. She talks about some tragic stories, she talks about some really tragic events in the book, and also she talks about the several incidents which will definitely put a smile on the face of the readers. But the readers and the students will notice that even when writing about negative or I would say such bad things, Sudha Murty is very much aware of the fact that humans are capable of errors, that these are human foibles, human feelings, human mistakes, and it is absolutely okay to make mistakes. She does not hate people, who make mistakes due to jealousy or greed, but at the same time she also wants us to always avoid the feelings of jealousy, greed, pettiness and you can say small-mindedness, right? So Sudha Murty is well aware of the fact that we are all humans, that we all make mistakes, that we all commit mistakes and that humans are born to commit mistakes and only through committing mistakes do we learn something, isn't it? So there is no human in this world and there is no person who has not committed a minor or a major mistake in their lives, and that there is no human in this world who cannot improve themselves by learning from the mistakes that from the mistakes. And it makes us also realize that a person is a wise person only if he or she learns from the mistakes and experiences of others. It is always wiser and better, I would say, to learn from the mistakes of others, and it is always better and wiser to learn from the good act of others and to be inspired from them by them. So on this note, I would say that this short story collection titled Wise and Otherwise, it becomes very important to understand, to appreciate and to finally imbibe and ingrain in our lives the various lessons that Sudha Murty is giving us. So therefore this is the reason why, despite being discomfited, despite being disappointed by some really bad people that Sudha Murty comes across in this collection of short stories, she does not still outrightly hate them, but at the same time she also carries a certain amount of poise in her approach. Hence this book is not as much about, or this short collection of anecdotes is not about any particular ideology by Sudha Murty, but rather it's more about celebrating the triumph of life. It's more about the positivity of life, triumph and positivity of life. As I just mentioned, these are some elements which make us human. They make us human beings, and in this rat race of today's world, in this fast paced world, we have forgotten these very ideas, of human dignity, of human triumph, of the triumph of life and the positivity of life, right? So Sudha Murty is, through these collection, is trying to make us understand that we need to maintain our dignity and to be honest in our approach towards life and towards the professional challenges. Plus I would say she also says that one must work hard to achieve success rather than try to act clever or make shortcuts or be over smart, because the success that one gets with hard work is permanent. However, the success that one might get with some smart work can be negative, it can be ephemeral, it can be, you can say, temporary, and extremely short lived, of course. So even though these short stories, these short anecdotes were published, you know some 25 years ago, some of the anecdotes are, they go much back in time. I believe almost all these anecdotes are very relevant today, even today, in 2025. This is because the points that Sudha makes here does not conform to any one particular space or any one particular place or any one particular historical moment in time. Rather, these stories and the anecdotes are about life in general, which will remain relevant, even 100 years from now on, right? So this is the iconic strength of these collection of anecdotes titled Wise and Otherwise, right? Also, you would realize that the NEP 2020, the curriculum, the framework that we have currently, it endorses putting and creating curriculum which will not just add academic but also a moral and professional value to our lives, right? So students who read this paper, Life and Literature, and who read this book, Wise and Otherwise, will definitely derive valuable lessons on how to conduct oneself to ensure that success falls in their way, and in their personal and professional lives both. So this is the reason why this paper has been added to GE Life and Literature, and that is why the Department of English has prescribed this paper in the undergraduate level programs at the University of Delhi. The life lessons that one gets from this book is timeless, it is classic, and it is for all the times to come, because it's essentially, it talks about the very concept of humanity. It talks about human emotions, it talks about human foibles, human errors, it talks about human mistakes. At the same time, it also talks about human resoluteness, human strength, and how humans are brave, and how they are courageous, how they are strong, they are resolute, and they are determined. But at the same time, they can also be evil and regressive and negative. So therefore, as long as humans are living, as long as human civilization is going on, as long as humans will breathe, as long as people like you and me are alive, as long as human institutions are alive, I would rather say, these stories and the life lessons from Sudha Murty's own personal day-to-day life will always and always be relevant, and they will always be timeless. So in this book, Sudha Murty gives very valuable words of wisdom which students of literature, they need to learn. Literature, as we all know, is not just about reading fiction or poetry or theater, or watching a performance or a short story. Literature is also about non-fiction, isn't it? And learning from the various aspects of life. Literature teaches us to be much more human, right? At the same time, it teaches us to be morally correct. It teaches us to be resolute in times of distress. It teaches us to do well and to try to do well even in the toughest of circumstances. And that is essentially the lesson. And this is the lesson that Sudha Murty wants to give us in this collection of short anecdotes titled Wise and Otherwise. So this piece of non-fiction, even though it is non-fiction, it is offered at the Department of English, it gives valuable lessons in humanity and the words of wisdom which students of literature need to learn. Perhaps I would say that this generic elective GE paper is the paper which will stay with each one of you who is reading this paper, and this paper will stay with you for generations to come. I would even go on to the extent of saying that, rather to make this claim that even the incoming generations and those readers who are reading in their next generation, their own children, perhaps their own future generations can also learn from these. And if one is able to abide by these elements, and one is able to imbibe these morals, these positive things in their own life, perhaps they can also pass it on to their future generations. In fact, I would strongly make the claim that Sudha Murty's own life and her own acts of philanthropy is also an inspirational thing which will be remembered for generations to come. So therefore, I would say that this particular paper, GE Life and Literature, is perhaps one of the best papers that we have to offer under the generic elective scheme by the Department of English at the University of Delhi. Also, the words of wisdom are sometimes disconnected with the theme of any particular story, but it is a learning which Sudha Murty has learned from her experience. In each and every single anecdote from chapter number 1 till 51, each and every single anecdote that is presented in this book, Sudha is basically trying to share her experience of life, which I personally believe are very, very valuable for young students who have just now entered into the college life after completing their school life. So therefore, each and every story is a lesson learned. Each and every chapter is a lesson learned. It's a valuable lesson which comes with experience, with pain, with success, and with failures. So let us try to learn it from Sudha Murty's experience, isn't it? So what Sudha Murty has done is, that she has given her own experience of life. She has given her own experience of pain, of the sadness, the happiness, success, dejection, good and evil, and whatever she has learned in her long life as a philanthropist and as a social worker in this big collection of short anecdotes. One of the main purposes of literature is to learn human condition, human values, human problems, human institutions, to understand history, politics, human psychology, human emotions, human conditions and values. All of this Sudha Murty has learned through her long experience as a philanthropist, as a teacher, as a social worker, as an entrepreneur, as a businesswoman, as a business tycoon. And the readers will in turn learn all of these things, from her. And through these short, almost almost biographical anecdotes that the author has presented us, I believe that these stories might not be fictional, but they are, nonetheless, they are serving the purpose of learning human conditions, human values, and human psychology. So the generic elective courses or G courses that are being offered at the University of Delhi are basically meant to give an experience to non-English literature students. Of course, the students from the English honors background will not be studying this particular paper. You must be from a department other than the English department, because that is what generic electives, that's the purpose of GE papers, right? So the non-English literature students or the non-honors students can understand the kind of literature that is being taught at the Department of English at the University of Delhi. So the purpose is to appreciate life and to understand the various colors, the various hues of life, to understand the pains, the tribulations, the problems, the hopes, the aspirations, the successes, the victories of life by being sensitized through literature. Literature which makes us highly perceptive towards emotions and human conditions. So all of this can be learned by Sudha Murty's collection of short anecdotes titled Wise and Otherwise. Let me also give a brief idea about the tone of these stories. The tone of these stories is more or less it's humorous, but at the same time it is sarcastic also. Such a mixture of contrasting tones is very important in creating any piece of literature, right? So the humorous tone makes it more readable and accessible to the readers, and the sarcastic tone makes the readers think about the issue that Sudha has raised in a much more critical manner. But these aspects have their own role in the success of any piece of literature. The tone definitely decides the readership and how the readers are going to respond to it. So while reading literature, we have to understand the technicalities and the figure of speech and the techniques that the author has used, which are also known as authorial techniques, to understand the effect that a particular text will have on the readers. The reason that this particular book has become so popular and it has sold over more than 1 million copies is because of the readability of Sudha Murty's stories. Sudha Murty is extremely readable. She's very simple, she's very straightforward. The tone of the language of the text is very simple. It's so effective, and at the same time it is so straightforward that it makes the entire reading process very untiring. It makes the entire reading process very refreshing, right? And it makes the collection of the short story very accessible to all the readers. So while we read the stories, we have to understand the tone of that particular story. And while we read the various anecdotes and the various real life anecdotes of Sudha Murty, we must appreciate the simple manner, but the highly effective manner and the accessible manner in which Sudha Murty, writes, and this shows her vision as an artist and a writer. So she wants to communicate the ideas, the doubts, the lessons, the problems, the morals, the life lessons in a very straightforward manner, which the readers can understand and which the readers can adjust with and possibly also apply them in their own lives. So Sudha Murty shows the innocence of life, and herself being someone who has seen the world and someone who has a vast experience of life and who has been into philanthropy. Therefore the stories come to us in a very positive manner, and the stories allow us to understand life in all its colors, in all its shades, in all its variety. So this was the brief introduction to the book Wise and Otherwise by Sudha Murty. In the subsequent lectures, I will be taking up detailed discussions on the various chapters of the book. And in the subsequent lectures, I will be taking up 5 stories in each lecture. So each lecture will be having 5 stories, and I will be giving summaries, and you can find all of these in the playlist. I'll be adding this video as well in the playlist. So I'll be giving summaries of each and every anecdote, and will also briefly touch upon the important themes of that particular chapter. So please stay tuned for more such lectures. Thank you so much, and I will see you shortly. Goodbye. Jai Hind.